Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. So today we are going to continue our topic for this course, which is regarding the parental care. Okay, but before that, let me share my slide first. Okay, I hope everyone can see my slide. So basically, previously, we already learned about the parental care, which is the parental care is actually a behavioral and evolutionary strategy adopted by some animals. Okay, that involve a parental investment. Okay, that the parental investment that we made to the evolutionary fitness of the offspring. And also, the pattern of parental care, actually, they are widespread and highly diverse across the animal kingdom. Right. So for today, we are going to continue about the evolution of the parental care. So, the parental care does not always take place in many species. For example, clams, barnacles, and many fish. The eggs are shed into the water and abandoned, and this is similar to the turtle, okay, turtle group. So the young are on their own once they are hatched, right? So actually the parental care not always take place in the animals. It different compared to human. So the cost and benefits of parental care. So the decision to offer parental care depends on whether the such care, which is the parental care, will increase the caregiver's lifetime reproductive success, and the greater investment in individual young, okay, necessarily reduce the number of young that can be produced. Okay, so more investment to the individual young, which means they will get the reduced number of siblings that can be produced by their parents. Okay, and consequently, species choose between producing many or small or uncared for young or fever, larger, or they also can choose to care for a young. Okay, and if parental care enhance the survival and growth of young enough to compensate for the reductions in young produce, then we will expect the parental care can be evolved. Okay, so obviously, one constraint of parental care is the ability the parent has to effect the offspring survivals. Okay, for example, here is the barnacles. So the barnacles group, they are produce many thousands of eggs, okay, which are shared into the water and drift away. And the eggs are developed into the larvae, and one day will settle permanently on a fixed substrate. Okay, at the end they will fix to a substrate, and the barnacles are docile and can do nothing to actively assist their young. Okay, so, in the Binnacle examples, so that they do not have to involve the parental care because of they cannot do nothing to assist their young. So this is the example in the group of Binnacle. And for the parental care in organisms that can give it, may significantly enhance the prospects of the offspring surviving to adulthood. Okay, for example, higher body weight or at fledgling significantly increase a small bird's chances of surviving to adulthood. Alright. So for the extra investment, for example, in here, which is the parents working harder to supply food. So the parents working harder to supply food we can call as a extra investment. Okay, so the extra investment comes at a cost, though, as it may reduce the parent's prospect of surviving over the winter, right? And this may affect, so this effect has been documented in many studies in which brood sizes of parents will increase. So this is actually the cost and benefit of parental care. And the cost of parental care are associated with the increased investment in a given offspring, and can cause the parents to limit the investments they make, so as to increase their prospect of survival, and also to allow them to invest in future offsprings. Okay, and this decision can cause of the parent offspring conflict. Okay, later on we will study about the parent offspring conflicts. All right, so we move to the family conflicts. So everyone is familiar with human family conflicts. Okay, in human, normally we have the conflicts. Okay, but it is perhaps surprising that scientists were slow to recognize the importance of conflicts in the evolution of interactions in animal families. So the same to the animals. The animals also have conflicts, right? So the Robert Shrivers in 1974, it changed the perception of family life. So we in the animal, they have two sources of conflict, which is intra brood conflict, and also the second sources of conflict is the inter brood conflict. So we'll go one by one. Hold on, okay. So this is the sibling rivalry and the parent offspring conflicts. Okay, so the first sources of conflict is the intra brood conflicts. So in here, um, a parent is related genetically to each offspring by zero point 0.5. Okay, so in here we consider as a species with sexual reproductions and brood of two offspring. So this is offspring one, so this is offspring two. So we assume that a parent is related genetically to each offspring with zero point 0.5, which is half, and offspring genes come from the other parents. Therefore, there is no genetic reason for a parent to favor either offspring. So these parents, there is no reason to favor either to the offspring number one or to favor the offspring number two. Alright. However, from the offspring view, from this offspring one view or offspring two views, so it should be more interested in its own welfare than its sibling. So the offspring one is more interested about themselves, okay, because they have one related, okay, compare they are compared to the other offsprings, okay, their siblings. Therefore, each offspring should try to get more than its fair share of parent investment. Alright? Because of each parents are more related to themselves. Okay, they are more related to themselves because they have one. So they also have one here. Okay, they are more related to themselves than each other of their parents. Okay, when they are compared to themselves, so they are only related by zero point 0.5. So there is no genetic reason for parents. Okay, either parents here. Okay, but offsprings, they are only interested in their own welfare more than its siblings, so they are trying to grab more of the attentions of the parents. Okay, compared to their siblings. So this is we call as an intra-brood conflict. So we move to the inter-brood conflicts. So at times will come where it will pay a parents to terminate care of its offspring and save the care, okay, save the care to the further investment for the next one, for the next offspring. Okay, however, the current offspring will benefit by continuing to demand care. Okay, because once again, it is genetically more interested in its own welfare. Okay, its own welfare than of its future sibling here. Okay, because of the future sibling are only half as likely to share a copy of gene that reside in the current offspring. Okay, they are only related by 0.5. Okay, that is why the current offsprings are demand more. Okay, then they will get more benefits from the parents. Right. So this is what we call as the inter-brood conflict. So, as a conclusion, okay, so this is the differentiation between intra and inter-brood conflict. So for the intra-brood conflicts, so this is where a parent with two offspring, okay, they have two offspring in a brood, okay, dalam satu masa in a brood. So the parent is equally related to both offspring, which is 0.5 and 0.5. They are equally related, but each offspring is more related to itself, okay, which is one. So this is more related to itself, which is one, than to the siblings, okay, which is they have 0.5. So this is in the intra-brood conflicts, okay. And the second one is the inter-brood conflict, which is where the parent with one offspring per brood. Okay, they have one offspring, and next cycle, they will have another offsprings. So again, if they assume that the offspring in the next brood is a full sibling, okay, we assume that from the same father and mother. So the current offspring's value itself is 1.0. Then its future sibling, which is only 0.5. Okay, whereas the parent is equally related to both offspring, which is 0.5 and 0.5. So this is what we call as the inter-brood conflict. So there are evidence that have been studied and the proof of this sibling rivalry. Okay, so we have two. The first one is the facultative sibling. Okay, facultative sibling side. Okay, so in the interbrood conflict. Okay, so in the interbrood conflict, is a parent with one offspring per brood. Okay, so this is the interbrood conflicts. So for example, in the first sales, okay, arising from the unpredictable food, the situation. So in the Galapagos Island, so in years of poor condition, whereas there are poor conditions, okay, 23% of pups are born while their older siblings are still being nursed. Okay, so that in here you can see, so there is a interbrood conflict, where is a parent with a one offspring per brood. Okay, so many of these new pups, the 23% here, so many of these new pups either die of starvations or are killed when they are attacked by their own sibling. Because of their own sibling, they are still being nursed by the parents. So this is the examples of facultative sibling side in the interbrood conflict. All right. So the facultative sibling sides in the intra-brood conflicts. So as you know, the intra-brood conflicts is where a parent with two offspring in a brood. Okay. For example, in the blue-footed bobby. So in the blue-footed bobby, the parents, the mother are lay two eggs in the brood. One brood, they lay two eggs, but they have difference, which is 4 days apart. So the incubation of the egg begins after the first egg is laid. Okay, so the first chick has about the first chick which is hatched from the first leg, the first egg, sorry. So the first chick has about 4 days growth before its younger sibling, the second eggs, hatches. So there is always an older sibling, even though they are in a single brood. Okay, so the older chick has a size advantage. Okay, because they are hatches for this earlier compared to the siblings. So when the food is rare, okay, when in the situation where the food is rare, so the younger chick rarely gets fed. Okay, so when the older chick is for about 20 to 35% below its expected weight, it attacks and pecks at its younger sibling and causing them to be reluctant to beg for a food. So this is the facultative, the evidence of the sibling rivalry in the in the form of facultative sibling sites. Okay, in the intra-brood conflict. Okay, which is in the situation where a parent with the two offspring in the brood. Okay, so in the case of intra-brood conflict, Okay, again, intra-brood conflict is a parent with two offspring in the brood. So in the case of intra-brood conflict, the parent's total investment for the whole breeding attempt is fixed. Okay, and an increase in feeding to one offspring in a brood reduce the feeding to another offspring in the same brood. Okay, so you can understand this one. And in the case of interbrood conflict, so interbrood conflict is one parent with a one offspring per brood. Okay, so in the case of interbrood conflicts, an increase in total parental investment for the current brood decreases the parental survival or investment in the future broods. Okay, so this in the case of interbrood conflict. Okay, so the second evidence of sibling rivalry is the obligate sibling side. Okay, just now we're talking about the facultative sibling side. So this is the second evidence, which is obligate sibling side. So, for example, in the some birds of prey, which is pelican and bobbies, so the older sibling always kills the younger sibling. Obligate, okay, always kills the younger sibling. So, why do the parents lay two eggs at all? Why still the parent need to lay two eggs? Okay, at all. So the obvious hypothesis is that in these cases, the second egg is an insurance in case of the first egg fails to hatch. That's why even though we know that the older sibling always kill the younger sibling, but the parents still lay two eggs because as an insurance if the first egg fails to hatch. That's why even though they have they have the sibling rivalry, and they also know that the older sibling always kill the younger, but the parents also still lay two eggs for insurance. Okay, so the second evidence is the sibling relatedness affect their rivalry in the rivalry. So, in theory, an offspring demands for parental resources should depend not only on the benefits that the offspring can be gained, but also on the cost from depriving sibling from resources. Okay. So this is um, two reason why the offspring demand for the parental resources. Okay. First, for the benefits for itself, and the second one also for the cost from depriving the siblings for resources. Okay, as the relatedness to other offspring declines, so less related siblings become less genetically variable. So the cost of depriving them of food will decrease. Therefore, an offspring's demand for parental resources should increase. Okay, so this is the third evidence of sibling rivalry. So a study had been tested, okay, in the third evidence, which is in the group of passerine birds. So it will increase the offspring's selfishness when the brood mates are lower relatedness. Okay, so the nestling mouth become rather with increased hunger. Okay, and parents use this signal, which is the coloration of the mouth. So the parents use this signal to direct food to the most needy chicks in the brood, because the parents know when the mouth are get ready, which is they are more hunger. All right. And the study predicted that if decreased relatedness to other offspring in the brood will lead to increase the offspring selfishness, then offspring should have rather mouth in species with higher rates of extra paternity. All right. So this is the study that had been done to prove the second evidence of sibling rivalry, which is the sibling relatedness that affect the rivalry. Okay. So, the parent offspring conflict, the sibling rivalry might sometimes benefit parents. Okay, even though we know one normally the younger one will be killed. Okay, or will be will have starvation. All right, but the sibling rivalry might sometimes give the benefits to the parents, even if they are equally related to all offsprings. Okay, so for example here we talk about the arm race. So the arm race between the parents and siblings can be extreme result of parent offspring conflict. Okay, so we will look into it. So, for example, in here, so the brood hierarchies facilitate the brood reduction. Okay, the hierarchy in the brood will facilitate the brood reductions. So this study had been done in the blackbird, which is Turdus marula. So this is the brood hierarchy. All right. So we have the synchronous hatching, and also we have the asynchronous hatching. Okay, so this is the mean number of young surviving of 2 weeks. Okay, this is with the condition of good food supply, and this is with the condition of poor food supplies. So in the poor condition here, as you can see from here, the asynchronous hatching more survive, okay, compared to the synchronous hatching when the situation in a poor food supply. Okay, because with a clear hierarchy, the smaller chick quickly died, okay, and leaving the parents with reduced brood, which they could raise effectively. All right. So as you can see from here, for the asynchronous hatching, so we normally will have the bigger size of the chick, and also the smaller size of size of the chick. Okay, in the asynchronous hatching. So this in the poor condition, so it will lead the smaller chicks will die quickly. So this will leave the parents with reduced brood, which they could raise effectively. They only get they only can raise the bigger one. Okay, so they will give the benefit to the parents. Okay, and for the synchronous treatment, okay, the synchronous hatching here, so the nursing took longer to die and more died, okay, in the poor food supply conditions. While in the good conditions of the food supply, as you can see from here, the synchronous hatching tended to do the best compared to the asynchronous hatching. Okay, because in the asynchronous hatching brood, okay, in the asynchronous brood, they have a size hierarchy, okay, which allows some chicks to pick on the others, okay, when in a good, even though in the good food supplies. So when they are they have a good food supplies, the synchronous hatching is the best way. All right. So this is the conflicts during the pregnancy. Okay. The genomic imprinting is most gene expressed same way, which is the genes are expressed or inherited by a mother or a father. But in the imprinted genes, the imprinted genes behave differently depending on which parent they come from. Okay, the genes are come from which parent. Okay, so in this situation when the females are made with many males, so a male gene may act to sequester the resources for the offspring in the utero of the female. So the genes are typically encode insulin. For example, in here, the insulin is growth factor, and there are receptors. Okay. So as you can see from here, if the insulin like growth factor 2, okay, for example, in here the insulin, yeah, and that affect the growth factor, the IGF2, is paternally imprinted, which is expressed when inherited from father only. So we call it as a paternally imprinted. So if inactivated the paternal allele, the offsprings are 60% their normal rate. Okay. But when inactivate the maternal allele, so there is no effect on the birth weight. Okay, and if the insulins of the insulin like growth factor 2, okay, that effect that encode the growth factor. Okay, if the IGF2 is maternally imprinted gene, which is expressed when inherited from mother only, okay, the genes. So inactivated the maternal allele, 20% of the offsprings are larger than normal at birth. Alright, and when inactivated the paternal allele, there is no effects on birth weight. So this is the conflicts of the offsprings, okay, during pregnancy. which is they are involved of insulin, okay, from which parents they are come from. All right. So, can this conflict be resolved? Okay, can the parents' offspring's conflict can be resolved? So, resolutions can be occur when offspring demand and parental provisioning become co-adapted. Okay, if these two become co-adapted, all right, and each develop honest signaling, okay, and a stable strategy involve offspring only increasing its demand with need, and the parents requiring an honest signal for that need. Okay, so if this one, if the offspring only demand depends on their needs, okay, and the parents give the attention or give the investment using the signal that they gave by the offspring, so the parent offspring conflict can be resolved. So for example in here, for example in here, in the canaries, okay, the nestling beg more vigorously when hungry, and the parents provide more food as begging signal increase. So the parents depends on the signals that have been given by the offsprings. Okay, so the nestling didn't beg extra because extra begging was shown to be costly. So the sibling that begged for longer in an experiment has a lower mass gain. That is why the the begging are only increase in demand with a need, okay, because of when they give extra begging, it was shown to be costly. So they give the very real demand or very honest signal to their parents. Okay, then we move to the discriminating parental care. So, misdirecting parental care towards non-offspring obviously would be costly mistake for any organisms. Okay, so we all know about this. So many animals rear their young in colonies. Okay, and there is plenty of opportunity for confusion. Okay, so this can make the parents confused which is their own offspring, because most of the animals are right, they are young in the colonies. Okay, so for example in here, the discriminating parental care, caring for your own offspring is good, okay, but caring for the offspring of others is not good. Okay, for example in here, the parents that take care for these brown-headed cow chicks, okay, in the brown egg here, will suffer reduced fitness compared to the birds that can discriminate their own eggs. Okay, so this is the discriminating of parental care. All right. So the other example, in the Mexican free-tail bats, okay, so from colonies numbering in the millions, and the females leave their pups in a crash in the cave that may contain 4,000 pups per meter square. So there's a lot. So do the females actually manage to feed their own offspring? Okay, do the females manage to discriminate their own offspring? So it's turned out that the females do. The females can discriminate their own offspring. Okay, so well over 80% of the time, okay, and seem to rely on both vocal and olfactory signals. So the female can recognize their own offspring or can discriminate their own offspring by using the vocal and olfactory signal from their own offspring. Okay, so 80% of the time, the females are managed to feed their own offspring. So this is the young free-tail bats at the crash. Okay, but even though there is a lot of pups here, the females still manage to feed their own offspring. Okay, in the Mexican free bed just now, they're using the vocal and olfactory cues to identify their own offspring from among thousands in the crash. Okay, and the bats do occasionally make mistake. Okay, because normally only 80% of the time the female can feed their own young. So maybe the bats are occasionally make mistake. Okay, the other 20%. But the benefits of leaving a baby in a crash, okay, mainly for terminal delivery, appear to outweigh the cost. Okay, even though there is still a small mistake that they can't feed their own offspring, but the living if they're leaving a baby in the crash, is appear to outweigh the cost, right? So there are the examples, okay, in the fossils, okay. So the female fossil give birth on crowded island beaches. So the female remains with the offspring for about 1 week only before going off to fish for 3 weeks. Okay, so it will take the offspring less than 5 days to learn the mother's call. And the mothers also, the females also, will learn pups call very quickly. And when the mother still return after the 3 weeks of fishing, so she call out and her infant calls back. All right. So the reunion take less than 15 minutes. Okay, for the mother to find their own offsprings because they are using the vocal and olfactory cues to identify their own offspring from among the thousands offspring here. Okay, so the mother still can discriminate their own offspring. All right. So we move to the adoption. So obviously, it will appear beneficial to avoid adopting other individuals' offspring. Okay, but such adoptions sometimes happen. So in colonially, the nesting girls chicks that have been fully fed in their own nest, sometimes the chicks will leave their natal nest and join another brood, where they often are adopted. Okay. So moving is often a good decision for the chick because they can end up being better cared for in a different nest because they also can get more food, okay, compared to their own nest. However, the adoptive parents, okay, in the new brood, okay, the parents in the new brood, however, the adoptive parents on average will lose 0.5 young of their own as a result of the adoptions. Okay, so why do they tolerate to the intruder? Okay, so why they are still tolerate to the intruder? So it most likely explanation is that the parent used an imperfect behavioral when deciding who to feed. Okay, so any chicks that begs for the food from the parents confidently is accepted and be fed by the parents. Okay, so this is the reason why the parents are still tolerate with the intruder, even though they know they will lose 0.5 young of their own offspring. Okay, and the reason why the girls do not discriminate more is probably that recognition error would be too costly. Okay, they want to avoid the recognition error. So the error in which a girl fails to feed or worse, attack and kills its own chicks because it thinks it's a stranger would be very costly. Okay, if they are still want to discriminate their own child, it may be error in discriminating their own child. So their own child can be attacked or worse, can be killed. Okay, so that is why they are just giving the food to all the offspring in the brood. Okay, so the cost of occasional adoptions appears to be low enough that selection has not favored higher levels of discrimination in girls. Okay, so this is in the adoptions. So in some instances, adoption, uh, sorry, okay, betul. So in some instances, the adoption appears not to come with a cost and may be beneficial to the adopter. Alright, it is common in the ducks for females to accept extra eggs laid in their nests and to accept stray ducklings into their broods. Okay, because the adoption don't have any cost, but it also can give the benefit to their brood. Okay, in the adoption. So this is the ducks. All right. So in ducks, there is little or no cost to adoption because of the chicks forage for themselves. The chicks are fine for the food by themselves. So the benefit appears to be that there is a predator dilution effect with the larger brood. Okay, additional young in the brood reduce the odds of a chick taken from the brood being the parents own young. So which means larger brood, okay, more adaptation in the brood, okay, larger broods can be more predator dilutions, okay. So we move to the brood parasitisms. So there are several species of birds that are obligate interspecific brood parasites. Okay, so the brood parasitism is when a bird lay its eggs in the nest of another bird. So we call it as the brood parasitisms, and the brood parasites is actually the organisms that rely on others to raise their young. So that is the terms of brood parasites. So this include the old world cuckoos, old world honey guides, and also new world cowbirds. Okay, the birds. And these birds lay their eggs in the nest of other birds. Okay, so this called as the brood parasitism and trick the host into providing all the parental care. So and their own parents provide no parental care. So it categorized as selfish. Okay, because these parents are lay eggs in the nest of other birds and provide no parental care. So this is selfish. For example, the European cuckoos in here. Okay, removing host eggs. So this group of birds are very selfish. So interspecific group parasitism is believed to have originated as intraspecific group parasitisms. Okay, so the intraspecific group parasitism is common in birds and has been recorded in more than 200 species. Okay, in the birds, which so it seems that common when the birds are lay their eggs in the nest of another birds. So a plausible transition to interspecific group parasitism would be for the birds to begin laying eggs in the nest of closely related species. So the brood parasites have a significant effect on the productive success of the host. Okay, the brood parasites, okay, the organism that rely on others to raise their young. And the baby cuckoos will eject the eggs and the young of the host. So the host rear no youngs of its own. Okay. For example, here the European cuckoos are removing the host eggs. So they are laying their eggs in here and let the other birds, okay, the owner of the nest, the other birds to give the parental care to their eggs. So this is very selfish. So you call a brood parasitisms. So the brood parasite exploit the host parent's tendency to feed the largest young in a brood and the one that can reach highest moose. Okay, and by lying, as you can see from this graph, okay, so by lying in the nest of smaller birds, the cuckoos give their young an advantage in the competition for the food. Okay, so how to choose where to lay their eggs, which is they will choose the smaller birds because their young can have the advantage in competition for the food. Okay, because the owner of the nest will have smaller birds. Okay, so do cowbirds whose eggs hatch after a shorter incubation period, which allow them to hatch before the host youngs. Okay, they also choose they also choose based on the incubation periods. Okay, And the advantage of laying in the nest of smaller species has been shown, okay, in experiments in which nestling of non-parasitic great teeth and also the blue teeth were switched between nests. Okay, so the smaller blue teeth did badly in the great teeth nest. Okay, so you can see from here, but the great teeth prospered in the blue teeth nest. Okay, so this is the nestling survival. Okay, so the blue teeth, so the nestling survival can reach to 80%, while the blue teeth to the green teeth, because of the blue teeth is a smaller, so they are did badly in the great teeth nest. Okay, but the great teeth nest, okay, the great teeth birds, they prospered in the blue teeth nest. Okay, they have the higher percentage of nestling survival. All right, so they are actually based on the size of the other birds. All right, so this is we call as a brood parasitism, which is when the birds that lay their eggs in the nest of another birds. Okay, so we have end with our topic for this week, which is regarding the parental care. And today we already learned about the evolutions of the parental care. All right, we also studied about the family conflicts. Okay, we have inter-group conflicts. We also have the intra-group conflicts. Okay, and we also learn about the evidence of sibling rivalry, which is we have three. The first one is the facultative sibling sides. The second one we have the what we call, we have the obligate sibling sides. Okay, and also the third is depend on the relatedness. Okay, and also we already learned about the discriminating of the parental care, the adoptions, okay, the benefit and the cost of adoptions, right? And also the last subtopic we learned for today is regarding the brood parasitisms. All right, so that's all from me. So I hope you understand this topic, okay, regarding the parental care. If you guys have any questions, you can just WhatsApp me, all right? So, okay, thank you guys. Thank you for your cooperation and see you next week. Okay, Assalamualaikum.